Hey everybody, happy to be here today. Going to spend the next 40 minutes or so going through collaboration for Revit, highlighting some of the new features within it. Overall, it's not going to kill anybody's mental capacity to know the new features, but there's one exciting, and I'll actually call it a preemptive new feature that I'll be talking about today, which is actually more important than some of the basic new features within C4R. But let's kind of get started with this and start kicking it off. So if you've seen this presentation before, unfortunately it's going to sound and smell a little like it did before, but it's got some new twists within it. Overall, welcome to you if this is the first time you've heard collaboration for Revit. And for those that are project delivery folks, and that means anybody. Whether you are on the ground as a busy worker bee, doing the Revit components yourself and Revit modeling yourself, if you're a support member using AutoCAD or other file formats of that nature for project delivery, or if you're the project manager and you don't have access and don't even want to have access to that Revit or that AutoCAD stuff, and you just want to take some oversight and see how the project's going, this next 40 minutes is for all of you. So collaboration for Revit, let's break it down into three parts. There's the part about accessing the data. There's the part about communicating, and then there's a part about sharing. So this first part is all about Revit. So don't worry, I'm going to get to the AutoCAD portion in a second, but this first part is all about accessing the project data. And if you're a firm that's doing Revit and using central file capabilities, whether it's a central file and using Revit server, or if it's just a regular old central file just on your own server, you may want or have the desire to take that model and have it live within a cloud environment. So when you try to wrap your head around it, you're thinking, can I use Dropbox? Can I use Box? No. That's just file sharing. That's just sharing files up to the cloud and back down, which means you have to upload and then somebody in return has to download, and it's just a mess because it's just a glorified way of doing things. So collaboration for Revit is a central file live accessible to Revit users from the cloud. And so the way that it works is we provide the cloud environment, and this is where BIM 360 team starts to come in. So the central file will live on the BIM 360 team site. Firm A that has multiple locations of Chicago and Boston, just as an example, they might have been doing Revit central files using Revit server in their own local area network or wide area network, which is fine. But usually what ended up happening is if a consulting partner, firm B, wanted to try to access their information, you couldn't do it because what was broken up in here was a firewall. And so to get around it, there was some superhero efforts to get firm B into the local area network of firm A. So with C4R, so let's just call it C4R because that's collaboration for Revit, and we always love acronyms within Autodesk. Within C4R, this is the enablement of these Revit workstations reaching, literally, when you would say file open, and you would open up that file right from the cloud, or file link, you would link that file directly from the cloud. There would be no more need of upload and download of files. So the superhero efforts in the past, this is what it meant. There was cost in dollars and time and people to get multi-firm concurrent authoring in the past. You'd have to get a hardware server. You would typically run Revit server. For your additional ancillary files, you would have like an FTP or cloud storage site in addition to these other servers. You would definitely need, this is the magic recipe right here, the magic ingredient, a VPN connection. Some folks would do a hardware accelerator, and then definitely the other magic recipe ingredient was the IT staff. For the project manager, this meant they would take a giant pill of a leap of faith. So in that case there, we move to collaboration for Revit. It becomes a software as a service, and all firms then push files to the server as a collaboration for Revit effort. And after that very first push of their Revit files, then it becomes simply a file open from the cloud, a file link from the cloud. Now, what immediately may come to mind, let me kind of circumvent maybe one of the questions. You may continue to use your best practices of Revit server or central file capabilities. Nothing's going to change there. So if you were a firm that did let's pretend that this is architectural firm, and they would do an architectural central file. And then that would be part of this, let's pretend that that's this one file right here as an architectural central file. And firm B, let's pretend that's a structural central file. They could also have their central file in the cloud as well. And then in return, the architects could then actually grab that structural file and then link it into their central file. So you could do that, or, you know, best case scenario, if you want the utopian, you could all work as multiple firms, multiple disciplines on a total of less central files. So for example, maybe the architects and structural engineers get along quite well because they've been working for a number of years together. They could, in effect, work on a single central file between the two of them. Or, you know, if it's a very small project, then maybe all firms would want to work on the exact same central file. And if you wanted to do that, there's no problem, because essentially this would then become one central file, and inside of this one central file we would invoke work sets, and maybe a work set listed as M, a work set listed as S, a work set listed as A. And so for those of you that have never heard about this idea of, what do you mean one file could actually have multiple people working on it? That's crazy. Like in AutoCAD, you would have one file per person working on it. So one file, one person working and saving on that file, and then somebody else would have to XREF it in. So that's the old world of AutoCAD. But if you're totally new to Revit, Revit has this central file capability where it is dynamic and allows this idea and function of multiple people working on that central file. If you want to learn more, this is where Harry would be a great resource to call up and talk to them about Revit at the very minimum. So what C4R saves, it saves in IT labor or expensive hardware. So essentially, we no longer need to do that. And that's great for the IT folks, because they just want to do their job in IT. They don't necessarily know all the nuances of an Autodesk software. So in this regard here, you know, forgive me for this if there's any IT people out there. This could be the IT person as seen by the project manager jumping through hoops, but no longer is this going to be the case. And then the other thing, this is where we're saying Revit usually, you know, a lot of people are making Revit synonymous with a tool that is leveraged within BIM, and that's fine. But when we're saying for the rest of the group, like, what else can we do with cloud services? So for example, this is the one cloud service that is directly tied into Revit and collaboration for Revit, the viewing piece, right? Because I said this cloud is essentially the team cloud, and the team cloud facilitates this viewing capability. So let me geek out on you a little bit here. This is me probably about 20 years ago when I had a little bit more hair on top. What your workflow would look like is this. You would start out as the Revit local file, and the local file may or may not have work sets invoked. Doesn't matter. So when you're ready to launch collaboration for Revit, you will save this, and I'll show this live in a second, but you'll save this up to the cloud. And this is the very first time that if you had a 100 megabyte file, it would push up 100 megabytes to the cloud. That's the only time that it'll ever push a full model up to the cloud. And then what it does in the background is it will create this locally cached file. So it pushes the local file up to the cloud, and then in return, it says, okay, Caesar's going to want to start working on a locally cached file, and then in return, it will bring back the 100 megabyte locally cached central file. So that's the very first step, and if we kind of erase that, then essentially now we are working on a central file from the cloud. So let's just say central CC, central cloud. Now, anytime that I make changes to this model, or anytime you guys make changes, because you guys are the workforce out there working in this, anytime you make changes in the model, so for example, if you had a wall and you put a door into that wall, this is called a delta change. You are changing, you are adding a door to a wall, and if you never touched anything else inside of that model, only this delta change is propagated up to the cloud. And then let's say that Harry or Tara were working in the cloud and they're the structural engineers, and they added just a single column. When I reload my latest work sets, this is what gets reloaded down through the cloud from the structural engineer, just a single entity. So what this means for you is, and if you're IT, or if you're going to be speaking with IT, it means that we are not consistently and constantly pounding the cloud and pounding the pipeline for data. We're not overstressing your data. These are very, very small packets of information, of data going back and forth. They are not constantly going back and forth because, like I said, you are always working on your local copy, and you're never working on the live central file in the cloud, right? So when you're working on it, you're really working in a sense of being offline. Your Revit does need to be connected to the internet, because every time you would do an object selection, so let's say that you selected another wall that was in the background, Revit then pings the server to basically enable that object and lock it out to you as Caesar. Okay, so that's how it's basically functioning and works. Let's move on to step 2 now. This is all about you folks in Revit trying to do your day job and trying to communicate with other people, either in your own firm or inside of another firm on the same project. And I've found a lot of people use things like Link or Skype to do communicating. Some people use text messaging or email. So what we have built into Collaboration for Revit is a tool palette called Communicator. And Communicator looks just like this. It launches as a separate window, and if you have 2 monitors, you can dock it off on a side window, and it runs in the background. And the people, for example, I'm in a project and I have these 2 other people in my project. This person might be the structural engineer, and this one might be the mechanical engineer. As the architect, if I was up here as the architect, I would see these 2 folks whenever they log in, and then I could start doing some chats with them. And it'll keep it historical, who said what at what time, as well as it has tools down here to which you could actually do screen captures and have direct chats and have screenshots. They can be one-on-one, so you could find somebody inside of your chatting window and chat directly to them, or you can have an entire team chat, which basically means anybody that's associated with the small medical center, anybody, so this could be like a total of 4 individuals, they would all get maybe this message right here. So that's the value of Communicator. On itself, this is a great additional value that comes in Collaboration for Revit. So this really can supplant all of those other text messaging capabilities of other applications. I've even had people starting to use some other online texting, but it's built into Revit now, which is a great thing. And then the contextual awareness, this is about who's doing what and saving what when. I don't think I could ever say that again, but essentially who's saving what and when they're saving it can be important, because if Tom is currently saving now, I will withhold my click on Save to Central so that I don't start bottlenecking the service. And what I mean by bottlenecking is I would be in a standby mode to Save to Central if Tom was actually saving right now. And then for me, that would create a little bit of a lag. But in this case here, I can avoid any kind of potential lags. I could check out to see who's saving. And let's say we didn't see Tom saving, Emily had just saved. I would then click on Save to Central. And then Emily would see, oh, Caesar's saving to Central. And she would withhold from saving at that given point in time. But at least there's a historical context as to who saved what. And in this, this is a good/bad example. Let's say that Jack or Kate came in on a Monday morning and they did some work and it just completely trashed our Revit Central file. Like, though that person, you know, they did some major design changes, I would like to go back and restore, you know, version number 3, because version number 4 is a train wreck. So I will go back into Revit and I will actually say, restore this past version. And then I would have a delicate conversation with Jack or Kate as to what really took place earlier Monday morning. So that is everything I talked about there. That is all about the people that are using Revit, the people that need to share the data out to the rest of the collective. This next spot is all about BIM 360 team. So let's bring in the rest of the people. So anybody that's just AutoCAD or does AutoCAD drawings, anybody that is a project manager, a project director that only needs to do red line markup, commenting, checking out the project status. This is for you guys. So once the data becomes collected, once it's sent from Revit, or other people need to upload files, they're going to use the BIM 360 team license for them. So, you know, those people that I just mentioned, you will subscribe to a BIM 360 team license. Your Revit people, they will get a collaboration for Revit license. It's as simple as that. So my project manager that I used to have to, you know, do some printouts, and then he would take his red pen and mark things up. This is that license for that person, BIM 360 team, and allow us to share, view, and search across some files. Now, essentially, BIM 360 team, it does some great things, which I'll speak to, but yes, we can host PDF files. But our biggest strengths and differentiator within Autodesk, because team is all about design. And during design, our strengths are RVT, DWG, Navisworks, NWC, DWF. So what I'm saying to you as designers, because design is fast and furious sometimes, and you have design sets, like 25% complete DD sets or 25% complete CD sets, what I'm saying is stop making PDFs of those sets for review and purposes. Just put up the native RVT or the native of these file formats, because you can then do design markup. You can also do 2D or 3D design review and markup and measuring across any of these file formats. Yes, whenever it comes time for contractual, like a stamped set of drawings, I'm sure that you're probably going to go back to PDF, which is fine, because that's a whole different part of the process. But in the meantime, you know, stick with the native and just do it like that. And then the nice thing about the BIM 360 team is this live review. So like one of our competitors, they have a live review capability within it. But right within team, if I open this model, so this is me, CR, and then I've got Harry over here. If I send Harry, there's a hyperlink from this model. So I'm going to send Harry this hyperlink. And then from that hyperlink, he can open it up in his iPad or anything that has viewing capabilities. It could be a phone or whatever. He will be able to see this exact same model from the exact same camera perspective. And when I spin this model, Harry will see on his screen the same model spin. So it's a live review tool. That's literally what it's called, and it's found directly within Team. And I did say, or if I didn't, here it is, within any 3D, almost any 3D format, you can use the native built-in team viewer to see this, and it's across virtually any device. So we do have iOS apps. We will be coming out with an Android app shortly, but right now iOS apps on these devices or desktop across any device, because the desktop app, or if you want to use it on Android, any Android device, as long as you've got a browser, you can view this website. The iOS apps are special because they allow you to take files and go offline with them. So that's the really differentiator between a desktop app or a web browser app versus an iOS app. But yeah, so the last thing I wanted to say here is the toolbars are consistent across the devices. Okay, so collaboration for Revit. This is when you subscribe to that, you get this central file capability. The people who are going to be licensed in C4R by default will get a license of BIM 360 Team. You'll get the Communicator, you'll get these model management and versioning tools, and you'll get scalable licensing. So from an IT or administrative, so let's say admins, you can, when you buy licenses of BIM 360 Team, or when you buy a license of C4R, which includes all of this, licenses are applied and bought at a user level, which means if you have 20 people that need to access BIM 360 Team, you would subscribe to 20 licenses, and they do come in license packs, and the license packs are discounted. You will subscribe, and then you will administer a license per user, and it's the license follows the user. So as my license is assigned to Caesar West, so Caesar West has a license of Team, I can open up an iPad, my phone, my desktop computer. It follows me and not my devices. And then let's say I move on to bigger and better things. My administrator can revoke my license and then give it to somebody else at any given point in time during your subscription. And that's a nice way, and that's what we call scalable licensing. And the investment itself, for example, just for C4R, is an $800 investment per person per year. But the math, if you break down the math, if it really just saves you 10 minutes a week throughout the duration of a year, if it saves you the time and the grief, sometimes grief is more valuable than time. If it saves you the time and grief of doing the upload, download, if it saves you the grief of doing chatting, if it saves you the grief of being inundated by emails about silly little questions on the model, if it saves you the grief of knowing which version is the proper version, if it only saves you 10 minutes a week, it'll pay for itself during that 1 year. Okay, so those are really important metrics. And remember those 3 points: accessing the data, the communicator with communications, and then allowing the rest of the entire team to see the data. Those are gold stars in 3 buckets. So here is a piece of the new, what's new. This is actually pre-what's new. Autodesk has come out with a beta. It started out in June of this year, and it's a Windows Explorer integration. Now, if you want to find it, please Google Autodesk Drive. It is not, because it'll come, if you do the Google, it'll show up as A360 Drive. It is not A360 Drive, okay? Literally look for and Google download Autodesk Drive. It's not at the very first search item. It's a little bit further down. It's either on the bottom of the first page or the second page. But go and look for it. This is what it's going to start to look like. And I'll show you exactly what this looks like. And the reason this is valuable is because Autodesk Drive then sits on the root of your my computer, like air quotes, my computer. You have your C drive, your D drive, your XYZ drive, And then you'll also see Autodesk Drive as a virtual drive letter. If you have Microsoft OneDrive, it's exactly the same thing as far as showing up in Windows Explorer. And Autodesk Drive is the mechanism to which XREFs can be shared. So this is fantastic for anybody that's using an Autodesk software. So AutoCAD, Revit, Civil 3D. If you have XREFs, you can make them live on the BIM 360 team cloud, and the XREFs themselves can be reached by anybody because of Autodesk Drive. Or if you want to say file open, you can open it directly through Autodesk Drive. So let's dig right into it here. So let's pick on our Revit friends here for a second. This is the workflow to which you would start collaboration for Revit. So here is Revit, and here is a local file. Let me kind of step back a little bit. You know, if you used file open, because I have collaboration for Revit installed on my machine, as well as you can also see, I also have Autodesk Drive. So in this case here, I have two shiny new icons of which I can leverage. So right now it's looking at my temp drive on my hard drive, but if I have a central file on the BIM 360 team site, this is really important. This is really allowing me as the Revit user to open up a central file on the team site. These are project folders enabled with central files. So I would go ahead and open up, this is one central file, wall plus circle.dwg, and I would click on open. Now that being said, if I just wanted to open up a regular kind of AutoCAD, or I want to do a DWG link into Revit, or if you're in AutoCAD, this will still show up in the side folder for AutoCAD. If you want to do a file open from here, you can certainly browse any of these things. So these look like little snowflakes. These are the hubs. And in this hub here, Skyscraper, this is the hub of which many projects radiate from. So it's going to prompt this hub. It then shows me all of the projects inside of this hub. And so for example, here's a May 2107 project. And I can go ahead and open up that file and open up that file folder and see what projects I want to get from it. So before I do any of that stuff, I'm going to show you how collaboration for Revit really materializes. So from the Collaborate tab, this is where we're going to take this local file and click on Collaborate in the Cloud. Now for here, our projects have been set up in the cloud, and I can have this Spring 2017 research project, and we can say prelim hospital. So even though I've called it November Hospital 2016, you rename it here before you push it up to the cloud, because this is making a brand new central file in the cloud, and you initiate. And then from here, it starts to do a few things. So it's going to, if this was just a local non-central file, it would then create a central file from it. It would also create the default work sets. And then from there, it would start to push that up to the cloud. And then once it's pushed to the cloud, it would then in return start saving that model from the cloud. You can see how it changed the name up here. It's already pushed it up to the cloud, and now it's pulling down the local version of this model to me for my local cache. And it is in a cache. It's in my user profile, my Windows Explorer or Windows NT user profile on my local computer. You know, under it'll be your last name, it'll be under hidden folders, local apps, and then Autodesk, and it'll have an alphanumeric name, but that's where it'll be. And you can always get to it if in case of emergencies, and then we would close. So now that button is gone because it knows that this file lives in the cloud. And now you could tell everybody through Communicator, which is right here. Communicator is going to look at my login. It's then going to look to log me in through this login identification here. And now we can jump into this project. And if there were more people inside of this project, you would send them an email message to say, hey, this project is open and live. Go ahead and open this file and create your own local copy of it. Because simply opening this file on a brand new computer will create the local cache automatically. But let me show you a Communicator with a little bit more chat in it. So for example, I have this one right here. This one's got a lot. So these are my teammates inside of this Autobahn project. And within this project, you can see that there's been cache going on. So, or not cache, you can see the chatting been going on. So I have a colleague who's online right now. I could chat with them directly, or I could send them a message to the entire team. But essentially, it works something like this. So if you have a question about this curtain wall, and you would use the screen clip like this and capture, and then you can say, like, what about the sill? Right? So these are nice little questions. They're not huge design issue questions, but they're questions that can pile up inside of your mailbox. So this can be held for the project group to see and actually question and come to a resolution right here. These are not major design decisions happening. So we can send images. You would send also maybe files. If there's a PDF spec or a program file, like the client's program, you would send it here as well. But this is Communicator. Now, essentially with this is where we had questions in the past about DWG linking. So if I wanted to insert a DWG link, this is where I'm going to say link CAD files, and I'm going to access this A360 drive. And like you saw me go into a second ago, you would say, okay, let's go to this file, let's go to this project right here. And it takes a second for it to activate because there's a lot of project folders in here. There we go. And you'd come down to the folder in question. And there's a local file, a local Revit files, and here's a DWG file folder. So within the Autodesk drive, it lets you browse the subfolders within the project. So I'm browsing deeper, and there's a circle DWG. And when you open this up, you would just do your standard Revit stuff. Right? Very, very technical words today. You do your standard Revit stuff. So we would let that come in. I don't really want it to come in, so I'm just going to cancel that. But essentially, I want to show you a file. Okay, well, it's going to come in anyways. Yeah, let me cancel that. Let me open you an example that I did earlier. So let me, before I leave that, let me just show you a few more things. We have the publish settings, and publishing, if you're used to Revit, is all about, I want to let people see only the 3D model and only sheets A1, A2, A3. The publish settings allows you to only share those files to which you want to share with your staff. So that's publishing. And then managing cloud models is how you restore older past models. So that if this was a bad save and we didn't want to make that change to this model, we would regress back to the previous version, and that's where you do it right from here. So let me close this off and let me show you back. Yeah, that's fine. Save it locally. Now stepping back into my splash screen, this is where we're going to end up here. You can see within the splash screen There are clouds, which means this lives in the cloud, and this file is local to my computer. Even the path, you can see the path is BIM 360 Spring 2017. Now these other ones, this is where I have other files that I wanted to show you as well. So let me go ahead and open. I'm going to back up here. And let me find this one file because it'll show you the X referencing that I want to highlight. Okay, that's it right there. So let's insert, this is a really complicated file. It's got 3 walls. Let's insert a link, and we're going to go out to the cloud. Let's go back here because actually that's where I want to go. So let's go to the cloud and skyscraper and grab that file link. And we're going to insert this. Let's put this, let's pick, so let's put this extra circle right here. So this circle is actually a DWG circle. And when you go into the manage links, this is what I was really gearing to show you. So this is a DWG. Look at the path type. This is a new path type because of the Autodesk Drive. So its path type is cloud. So what this means to you is, even though I'm working on a locally cached file, whenever somebody else goes and opens up this Revit file called walls plus circle, this path will remain persistent as the cloud path. In response to that, this will always be opening properly is basically the moral of the story. Okay, that's a pretty big deal. So let's look at one more thing outside of Revit now. Let's go into our team site. Here's what team looks like. Here's the hub. Here are the projects within the hub. And let's dig into this one project. So from a thumbnails view, you can see a lot of things. There's DWGs. This is what I was saying. JPEGs. You can see just below this is my document, like Microsoft document. Over to the left is an Excel spreadsheet right here. So all of your files, these are viewed natively. These are RVT files. This is a DOC file. This is an Excel file. Viewing them natively through the team site. That's a big plus. You also see this project file right here as version 4. We keep track of the versionings for you. So let's view this, and within this one file, you'll see it had the red line markup capabilities. It'll have the issue tracking. So your toolbars are right down here. This is it. Markup, you know, everybody knows how to do markup for the most part. You click on the tool and you draw the line work, and it creates a markup. These little bubbles or these tags are actually issues, and if you hover over time, they will actually have the issue number, which is self-generated, and the issue, what I'm saying below it says corner to be reviewed. When we zoom in, let's take a look at this door. So when I click on this door issue, it says here's this needs to be fire rated, was what Caesar said back in this date. And then Caesar's other brother, Caesar, says, no, this is a passage door. So you can have a comment trail directly through issues and come to resolution right through the cloud rather than a bunch of emails. So this saves on emails again. Now, what I usually recommend for those people who want to start using Team, when you click on a file like this, click on the overview button, because this is where all the magic happens. You get to see the comment history, including all of the sheets with respect to this Revit file. So this is what published. When you publish out of Revit, it only lets people see what you give them permission to see. That's a big, big deal. So we have version 4, and there are 10 comments in version 4. And when we scroll down, you can see that there's going to be more and more comments. So version 4, I'm scrolling. Version 3 of this file, because we're at version 4, right? Version 3 had other comments. Oh, and here's another one. This is a great example. I've shown this before, but it's the best thing since sliced bread. We had a question and a request from the architect, you know, add the wall, add the door, move these walls over here. And so we did that. As the users, we did that, and we uploaded version 4. So now as the designer, I want to compare version 3 versus version 4. This compare tool is, to me, has been the best thing since sliced bread, because this is a Revit compare, and as Revit, we allow the comparison at an object level. So when you look at this comparison, you can see these walls are in yellow, and you could turn that off. This wall and door is in green. That means 2 added, which are the basic wall and single flush metal door. The comparison takes place, you can do a search across architecture, or if you wanted to do a structure search, or electric, or plumbing, or mechanical. So you can search on object-based changes. Like if this wall, like for example, under modified, these walls might have changed from a 2-hour demising wall just to a regular partition wall. Or maybe they moved because there's the opportunity to change, shape change, transformations, or property change. But this one piece that I'm about to show is really the one that kind of pushed me over the edges. This is the best thing since sliced bread. Square footage. So at a program level now, you get to see this area, which is in version 4, has increased by 36 square feet. The perimeter's increased, the volume's increased. What was it in version 3? And when you click on version 3, you get to see exactly where it came from. So version 3 was that, and version 4 is that. So a great, great compare tool at an object level for Revit, and this is one more reason why I would say for design intent and for design process throughout your delivery of packets all the way up into sign-off, I recommend don't necessarily make PDFs anymore. Keep it as Revit or AutoCAD and take advantage of some of these capabilities here.